Let's go ahead and listen in now to Chief Madaria Arradondo.
Good afternoon, everyone. I first want to again extend my heartfelt condolences to Mr. Floyd's family and friends. I realize that many right now in our city are experiencing trauma and a range of emotions. And gatherings are a very natural space for folks to share those experiences. Our city's health and vitality is so important, and gatherings actually bring us together to have a healthy and safe space to do that. The Minneapolis Police Department will continue to ensure the safeguards of everyone's First Amendment, but that cannot be at the expense of others' personal safety. So I'm urging all of those who participate in these very important gatherings to do so and to be mindful of others' personal safety, their space, to be respectful, but we cannot have members of our community engaging in destructive or criminal types of behavior. I want to stress that the vast majority and the overwhelming majority of individuals who've been participating in these gatherings have been doing so respectfully and peacefully. But we have experienced over the last 24 hours some individuals who have disregarded the notion of respecting other space and personal safety. As Chief of Police, again, I want to make sure that we ensure everyone's First Amendment. These gatherings are very important, certainly for health and certainly for healing. But we have to, again, make sure that we're doing that, ensuring everyone's safety. Thank you.
We'll take just a few questions.
How many arrests, if any, last night?
My understanding is we had approximately 5 arrests, but those were not at the location of the 3rd Precinct specifically. It was adjacent across the street at one of our businesses.
And have those people been charged? Have they been taken to jail, cited? What's the status?
My understanding that it was potentially 5 burglary arrests. I believe a local liquor store was a part of that, and so I don't have the exact details on that, but thank you.
Chief, there's a lot of people obviously who are reacting to video and pictures coming out of pepper spray, tear gas, rubber bullets. Can you just respond to the use of those items?
Yes, so I certainly understood that based on, again, a lot of the emotion and trauma that many in our city has been experiencing, that some were going to express those emotions. When some of those individuals gathered at the 3rd Precinct, there was some property damage, destruction that occurred. Some of that was quite significant. I directed our folks to keep a level of restraint, and so we did not respond when that occurred. I did direct our officers to deploy gas once a secure fence was breached, and those individuals, again, not all, but some of those individuals were in our secured parking facility, which had access to our Minneapolis squad cars and weapons, quite frankly. And so, again, I was concerned about the personal safety of not only our officers, but of course those who were in attendance and the general public who was still out there observing. And so that's when I gave that directive.
Was Mr. Floyd resisting arrest on Monday night as had been alleged initially?
Yes, unfortunately I'm not able to comment on the specifics of that case right now. Obviously the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and obviously our local field office at the FBI is investigating
Chief,
that.
Your predecessor, after another sort of controversial police encounter, she said that she was going to not tolerate any sort of violence from protests during the Jamar Clark incident or death. Is your response or is your department's response going to be any different in this case? Are you taking a different approach?
I'm responsible for the public safety of all of our 400,000 residents and certainly our visitors and workers here. But I understand that every situation can be dynamically different. Again, the vast majority of people that participated in the gathering last night did so peacefully. I also know that some of these incidents come attached with trauma and people are reacting emotionally. Yesterday, I directed our officers to practice restraint. That meant, quite frankly, that a building, a city facility, was significantly damaged. But I'd rather have that than our officers being involved in an encounter where either they get hurt physically or one person from our community gets hurt. So those are decisions that I have to make, but I don't think there's a one size that fits all, or that every situation is going to be the same. I absolutely do not condone people assaulting each other or committing violence. But at the same time, I don't want to say that you're going to treat every situation the same, or that every situation is going to just turn out the same. So I hope that helps answer the question.
Chief, have you seen the body camera footage?
I have not.
And do you know when it might be released?
I do not. Obviously, that would be a question for our, the BCA, and certainly at some point that will go over to County Attorney Freeman's office. But I don't have any timelines on that.
Excuse me, sorry. Chief, can you just say how long the officers have all been with the department, just so we can have that on record? We're also hearing that Lane and King had just been on the job very briefly. They were new officers and had been paired together. So can you talk about how long they'd all been?
I apologize. Obviously, they were employed with the Minneapolis Police Department. I don't have their personnel data records.
If you want to get me that question, I'm working late tonight. I'll be more than happy to get that, the starting date.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one, Chief. So I was at the precinct this morning, third precinct, early, about 9, and there were just 4 or 5 people there. And there's a lot of garbage, and a couple of them had been there the night before, and they were picking up stuff. Spent canisters from the flash, whatever they're called, and the rubber bullets, and there was probably 30 or 40 of them on the sidewalk. And he put them in a plastic bag, and at which time, and I was there, right next to him, he was probably in his early 20s, and about 5 police officers came across the street, and they said, give us that bag of garbage, or that bag of stuff, and he didn't. And they arrested him.
Susie, I've not had the chance to brief the chief on this. He is not up to speed on each call each day, so he's not going to be able to address that at all. I'm sorry.
Well, it was very upsetting because I was pushed out of the way, and it was an uncomfortable scene, and I think it should be attended to.
Yeah, to your question,
Absolutely.
I will definitely, and I wasn't aware of that till now, and if you were pushed.
And this guy was arrested for no apparent reason,
Okay.
in my mind.
When this concludes, I would absolutely like to get that information from you.
Chief, one other thing, this isn't so much about the incident, I know you can't discuss that, but do you anticipate any other discipline being meted out to any other folks aside from the 4 officers, obviously?
We are absolutely going to look at that case in its full review. I'm certainly going to, at the end of the day, I'm the sole person who can administer discipline. And so, yes, I will look at that case. Again, I don't have all of the details before me. Internal Affairs and the Office of Police Conduct Review have not provided me that, but I will absolutely look at the case in its entirety. And I'm certainly a chief that wants to, if there's teachable or learning moments, I certainly want to make sure that our department learns from that. So, yes.
Chief, can you just respond to the mayor saying today that he thought that the arresting officer should be charged? Can you respond to that?
So, obviously, Mayor Fry, from the very beginning, when this incident occurred and he was made aware of it, was very passionate and spoke very strongly about the reaction to what he had observed. I certainly have said publicly as well that what I observed, those actions from those former 4 officers in no way reflect the values and the vision and the culture that I want to change here within the Minneapolis Police Department, and that so many of our men and women work each and every day to try to build those relationships of trust. So the mayor was certainly reacting to something that he was upset, he was emotional, and he was saddened by.
Any last question?
Chief, any idea of what your dollar losses were yesterday? I mean, I saw a squad car get beaten out of it and other things were damaged around the third precinct. Any idea what that cost us all?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I know that we are taking a look at that in terms of getting an estimated cost of the damage assessment. But I will also say, as chief, more importantly, there's a greater cost in terms of human beings suffering any sort of physical injuries. And so, at least from yesterday's incidents, there was not any reported incidents of any of the demonstrators being seriously injured. And none of our officers were seriously injured either. So to me, that's probably the best cost, and I'll take that cost each and every day over a broken glass.
Chief, one other thing, you sort of came in on the promise of reforming the
Yes.
department. What impact does this incident have, or how does that sort of fit into?
So that's a great question. So I know as chief that this journey, certainly for me, you have to look at it as a marathon, not a sprint. But each step along the way, I have to be very intentional to making sure that I'm doing all I can to instill the transformational culture change that I need to do, and that many in our community are demanding that things change within this organization. But one incident can significantly bring people to doubt that. And so that's why I'm obligated and dedicated to making sure that each and every day I act in a way, and our men and women act in a way, that builds that trust, that garners that credibility and legitimacy, and that also, when things go wrong, that we own it, and that we stand up and we hold ourselves accountable, and that we can look our community in the eye and say we are going to do better, because we must. If we're ever going to transform the culture of this police department, we have to have that relationship with our community.
Everybody, thank you very, very much. Susie, if you want to step around to 1:30, Chief will talk to you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.